Oh, no, they don't. We're being recorded, so we could start. We could start with, if you want to chant a little bit before starting, we could, to give a few more minutes for other people to arrive. Yeah.
I don't mind. It's just I don't have any cartels or anything here.
It's okay.
Is that all right?
Yes.
Acapella kirtan. Okay.
That will give me a, yes, do that. That
All
will
right.
give me a second too to take care of something.
All right. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Very good.
All right, I'll just say I usually chant Mangalatcharanam before I speak, so I'll go ahead with that. Om Ganathan Disha Ganandana Shlakaya Jakshu Militam Yanata Asmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Mano Vishtam Stapitam Yanaputare Swayam Rupagadamaya Darati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Tapakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavam Shah Shri Rupam Sagasam Sagana Raganaptam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvitam Sabaditam Prijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakambithamsha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagapate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastate Tapta Kanchana Gorangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrshavanustate Devi Pranamami Hari Priya Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhuttare Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Tiname Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pachari Vishesh Shri Bali Pashchitya Devi Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Saraswati Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatam Vyasam Tato Jainamudirayat Nasta Prayashu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Utamashloke Bhaktir Bhakti Naishtiki. Alright, before reciting the Shema Bhagavatam, which is our very major conquest, one should offer respectful obeisances unto the personality of Godhead Narayan, unto Narayan Rishi, this most human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and unto Shilpi Asade, the author. 1 second, I'm pulling up the Bhagavatam verse right now. So, today we are doing Canto 2.
2-1-23.
2-1-23. 2-1-23. Okay, entitled The First Step in God Realization. So hopefully Bhakta Fabian or somebody else will show up. If not, it'll be you and you. Alright. Shishuka Vacha Jitasyano Jitasvaso Jitasanko Jitindriya Stule Bhagavato Rupe Manaha Sandarayet Ya. Shukadeva Goswami answered, one should control the sitting posture, regulate the breathing process by the yogic pranayama, and thus control the mind and senses and intelligence. Just control the mind and senses, and with intelligence, apply the mind to the gross potencies of the Lord called the Virat Rupa. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The mind is the materially absorbed mind of the conditioned soul does not allow him to transcend the limit of the bodily conception of self. Thus, the yoga system for meditation, controlling the sitting posture and breathing process, and fixing the mind upon the Supreme, is prescribed in order to mold the character of the gross materialist. Unless such materialists are able to cleanse the materially absorbed mind, it is impossible for them to concentrate upon thoughts of transcendence. And to do so, one may fix one's mind on the gross material or external feature of the Lord. The different parts of the gigantic form of the Lord are described in the following verses. The materialistic men are very anxious to have some mystic powers as a result of such a controlling process. But the real purpose of yogic regulations is to eradicate the accumulated dirty things like lust, anger, avarice, and all such material contaminations. If the mystic yogi is diverted by the accompanying feats of mystic control, then his mystic of yogic success is a failure, because the ultimate aim is God realization. He is therefore recommended to fix his gross materialistic mind by a different conception and thus realize the potency of the Lord. As soon as the potencies are understood to be instrumental manifestations of the transcendence, one automatically advances to the next step, and gradually the stage of full realization becomes possible for him. All right. So again, the text. Sukadeva Goswami answered, one should control the sitting posture, regulate the breathing process by the yogic pranayama, and thus control the mind and senses with intelligence. And with intelligence, apply the mind to the gross potencies of the Lord called the Virat. All right, so to be honest, when I first heard about all this yogic stuff and pranayama stuff, I didn't really get the point of it. Like, I had heard of like yoga and pranayama and things like that prior to coming to Krishna consciousness, but to be honest, I didn't really understand the point of it beyond mundane exercise. And I was thinking, oh, sorry. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes,
Okay.
I hear you.
All right, so,
The
and
picture
I was
sticks
thinking that
sometimes.
pranayama okay. Okay. So anyway, so I'll keep talking then. So I was thinking that pranayama and yoga, it was kind of a way just for exercising and relieving stress. I actually didn't know that yoga had anything to do with anything spiritual until I came to Krishna consciousness. So this yogic process that Shukadeva Goswami is describing here, it's a way to help one start to control the mind and start to control the senses. And when you want to achieve anything in life, it involves a certain aspect of control. Does it not? I think you're a musician, right? So you played for orchestra. And I imagine not everybody is able to get on the orchestra team. There's like some level of standard in music that you have to achieve. In fact,
Yes.
when I took classic guitar, as I took it for several years. I had a teacher that had been doing it for over 30 years. And he was telling me that the great legends of classical guitar, they would practice for about 8 or 9 hours a day, which is why when you hold a classic guitar, you have to use a footstool. You put your foot up on a stool and then you kind of hold it like this. So and the reason why they did that was because they needed a sitting posture that would enable them to be able to practice for many hours without hurting their back or something. Because to be really good, that's how long you had to practice. So to do that amount of practice, it involves the sense of you have to be able to be disciplined. You have to be able to
Absolutely.
kind of control the mind, because the mind wants to do other things that are more fun. I mean, I remember having to do these scales over and over, and after you do them again, you're like, okay, I know this. But the part of it is you have to keep doing it because you have to keep working out your fingers and whatnot. So in some way, so to do anything really in life, or to be good at anything, you have to have a fixed mind and to be disciplined. So to actually realize the Supreme, or to begin to focus one's mind on the Supreme, one has to be cleansed of things like lust, greed, and so forth. Because when one is ruled by lust, greed, I think avarice was another thing that was said here. It kind of keeps us in this mode of passion, which is this constant mode of hankering and lamenting. Whatever I have is not enough. I need to get more. But when one is peaceful, then that comes from being in the mode of goodness. Then one can actually focus on the Supreme Personality of God. So this breathing process, or this pranayama process, and this yogic process, is the way to kind of help us. Is something that's used to help us calm down a little bit and be peaceful, and not think about, okay, what do I have to do? What do I have to attain? And I've gone into a few yogic, I guess you say, like ashrams or yoga centers, and one of the first things they tell us, when we're breathing, is just forget about everything else right now. Just focus on your breath. And when you're able to just do that, then you're not distracted by everything else that's going around you. So thousands of years ago, people would do this process to help fix their mind. However, Srila Prabhupada tells us that this process of yoga and pranayama in this age is very difficult, because to do this properly, you have to go to the forest and you have to be away from a lot of distractions. And so Shukadeva Goswami and Maharaj Parikshit, they're on the bank of the Ganges. They're in a very nice, peaceful environment. But for us in this age, most of us aren't going to have the opportunity to do that. So therefore, the process for controlling the mind in this age is the chanting of Hare Krishna. And I've even tried it myself, sitting down and just tried to do silent meditation. And it works for about 5 minutes, and then I get kind of bored and I need to do something else. And so that's even changing my job, but maybe you have this experience too, that you're chanting 1 round, 2 rounds, and then you're looking at your beads and you're like, okay, how long do I have to go before I finish this next round? Like this type. You do that? I think everybody does. Everybody does that, right? That's because we have so many distractions. So if we have difficulty even just chanting the holy name, like what to speak of doing this process. And also another thing with this process is that one can get distracted, because if one even manages to do it really well in this age, you start to get mystic potency. And by getting this mystic power, one can start to think that they are the Supreme Personality of Godhead, or they are in control of everything. So that can also distract us in a way. But the main point is that, and this purport is that one has to begin a process in which they can gradually fix their mind on the Supreme Personality of Godhead, because we're contaminated by so many things that it's really hard to think about Krishna. I mean, just to think about Krishna in our daily lives are difficult. So this is the process that he's given to Maharaj Parikshit, and the process that George Chaitanya gave us is the chanting of the holy name.
Absolutely. I
Right.
just wanted to add a few things, what you were saying about the discipline of being a musician and many other disciplines. In reality, they all benefit from, having a proper posture. It helps you to be able to get absorbed in what it is that you're doing, like a full concentration in what it is you're doing. And so, it's obviously it can help one in their spiritual um, you know life. It can help them to focus, and many people go through that path. There are some people who just jump over and go right straight to chanting, and the next thing they're back to Godhead. But there's some who go through process of like trying to connect with the energy of God before they begin to focus on God as a personal, as a being, you know. So and just even to do anything, just to be a musician, I'm a better musician if I focus myself in that way, if I keep my back straight and breathe and keep my mind, all of the distractions out of my mind. That helps me to be a better musician. It can also help me to be a better spiritual person. Once I begin to focus on on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. you know but so this is very important. Like I was saying the last time we spoke about this, and we spoke about the Virat Rupa then too. I think even Maharaj had some comments to make online about the Virat Rupa the next day, because we did ask about that. But I think like I said last time, that many people use this path to get there, to get to where we are, or where we're trying to be. Many people use this path. Maybe in your search it wasn't such an essential tool, but for many people it is a very essential tool. And here Shukadeva Goswami is explaining it, and telling us that yes, this is a very valuable tool.
Yeah, no, it can. I've met a few people that have come to this path. I think we had one devotee here that was really on this path before he came to Christian consciousness, and he was doing yoga for so many hours every single day, and he was saying that he got really fit while he was doing this yoga. Get a really good body, and he was also, ironically, he was a musician like you, but he played in Mexico. He was I'm trying to think what instrument he played. I think like trumpet or saxophone or something, like one of these like bands that play salsa and all sorts of like Latin type music, right? So so he was doing this, but as he was doing his yogic spiritual practice, he said he kept reading that if you want to perfect this, you have to find a guru. But then also he was noticing, I guess later after he came to Krishna consciousness, that when he was doing this yogic path, like the better his body got, the more self-absorbed he kind of became. Because people people kept looking at like, oh wow, like you're really attractive. All the girls were kind of throwing themselves at him and things like that. So yeah, it helped him. But luckily, he found devotees, but he also mentioned the distraction. But I see that I can see that this really kind of does help with controlling the mind, because even I've done a little pranayama in japa retreats, and it really helps focus on the japa even. So all these techniques can be helpful. It's like I remember we also too when I was playing guitar, even just like making one slight change with my wrist. If I didn't hold my wrist in the proper way, they said you'll wear out. You won't be able to like actually play for long periods of time. So you had to hold the wrist in a certain way, which I didn't even notice. But it was that one little tweak that seems insignificant, but it helps so much. In the same way, sometimes doing these things, just these things like can really actually help us with our job too. And I realized that as I come to Krishna consciousness, just prior, because I had no Vedic background, I didn't really understand that it was anything spiritual. So, you want to do the next one?
Sure.
All right.
Visheshastasya deho yam shtavishtascha staviyasham yatridam yaj yate vishvam bhutam bhajyam bharakchashat. This gigantic manifestation of the phenomenal material world as a whole is the personal body of the absolute truth, wherein the universal resultant past, present, and future of material time is experienced. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Anything, either material or spiritual, is but an expansion of the energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And as stated in the Bhagavad Gita 13:13, the omnipotent Lord has his transcendental eyes, heads, and other bodily parts distributed everywhere. He can see, hear, touch, or manifest himself anywhere and everywhere, for he is present everywhere as the super soul of all infinitesimal souls, although he has his particular abode in the absolute world. The relative world is also his phenomenal representation because it is nothing but an expansion of his transcendental energy. Although he is in his abode, his energy is distributed everywhere, just as the sun is localized as well as expanded everywhere, since the rays of the sun, being non-different from the sun, are accepted as expansions of the sun disk. In the Vishnu Purana 1:22-52, it is said that as fire expands its rays and heat from one place, similarly, the Supreme Spirit, the personality of Godhead, expands himself by his manifold energy everywhere and anywhere. The phenomenal manifestation of the gigantic universe is only a part of his Virat body. Less intelligent men cannot conceive of the transcendental, all-spiritual form of the Lord, but they are astounded by his different energies, just as the Aborigines are struck with wonder by the manifestation of lightning, a gigantic mountain, or a hugely expanded banyan tree. The Aborigines praise the strength of the tiger and the elephant because of their superior energy and strength. The Asuras cannot recognize the existence of the Lord. Although there are vivid descriptions of the Lord in the revealed scriptures, although the Lord incarnates and exhibits his uncommon strength and energy, and although he is accepted as the Supreme Personality of Godhead by learned scholars and saints like Vyasadeva, Narada, Asita, Devala in the past, and by Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita, as also by the acharyas like Shankara, Ramanuja, Madhva, and Lord Sri Chaitanya in the modern age. The Asuras do not accept any evidential proof from the revealed scriptures, nor do they recognize the authority of the great acharyas. They want to see with their own eyes at once. Therefore, they can see the gigantic body of the Lord as Virat, which will answer their challenge, And since they are accustomed to paying homage to superior material strength like that of the tiger, elephant, and lightning, they can offer respect to the Virat Rupa. Lord Krishna, by request of Arjuna, exhibited his Virat Rupa for the Asuras. A pure devotee of the Lord, being unaccustomed to looking into such a mundane, gigantic form of the Lord, requires special vision for the purpose. The Lord therefore favored Arjuna with special vision for looking into his Virat Rupa, which is described in the 11th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. This Virat Rupa of the Lord was especially manifested not for the benefit of Arjuna, but for that unintelligent class of men who accept anyone and everyone as an incarnation of the Lord, and so mislead the general mass of people. For them, the indication is that one should ask the chief incarnation to exhibit his Virat Rupa and thus be established as an incarnation. The Virat Rupa manifestation of the Lord is simultaneously a challenge to the atheist and a favor for the Asuras, who can think of the Lord as Virat and thus gradually cleanse the dirty things from their hearts in order to become qualified to actually see the transcendental form of the Lord in the near future. This is a favor of the all-merciful Lord to the atheists and the gross materialists. So going back to read the translation one more time. This gigantic manifestation of the phenomenal material world as a whole is the personal body of the absolute truth, where the universal resultant past, present, and future of material time is experienced. This is very interesting because it talks about material time. I didn't get too much in the purport about the concept of time, about the universal form somehow embodying the past and the present and the future all at once. But it seems to be more of this idea that we're talking about the whole, the Virat Rupa being something that an energy that everyone can connect to. But here it's also the whole, which is the personal body of the absolute truth. So it's like being a part of the whole as well as the whole at once. And that's why some people will want that to see first, this part, this Virat Rupa, show me your universal form, but you can only see it if you're qualified to see it. So Arjuna had to be qualified to see it, but in order to move on to this the personal body, we can start with this particular Virat Rupa form as being the universal form. I really don't know so much more to say about it. I think the manga can talk about it, and we do have another guest here. Welcome, Hare Krishna, Rudis Prabhu. Who is this?
Mukunda.
Mukunda. Okay, all right. Would you wish to speak a little bit on the on this verse a little bit?
Me or him?
You first, because
Okay, yeah,
he's
I'll
only
say
partially connected.
Well, yeah, he's driving, but there was a point in here in this purport that reminded me of something that we had talked about, like during the last class, or at least I think we hinted on this. It says here, they want to see their own eyes at once, therefore they can see the gigantic body of the Lord as Virat, which will answer their challenge, since they are accustomed to paying homage to superior material strength like that of the tiger, elephant, and lightning. They can offer respect to the Virat Rupa. And so I think we kind of hinted on this 2 weeks ago. I can't remember if it was me or if it was you when we were mentioning something about nature and seeing God in nature. And Prabhupada had written this book. I believe he wrote it before he came to the US. It was called Light of the Bhagavat. And have you read this? Read this? So
No, but I remember our discussion about pantheism, of course. Go on.
Right, yes, and it was about like seeing the supreme in nature, because in Japan it was actually specifically written for preaching in Japan. I think Prabhupada had an opportunity to go there, if I remember the past time correctly. And anyway, because he was a sannyasi, he didn't have the funds to go, or he couldn't raise the funds. He also couldn't raise the funds to go. But anyway, he wrote the Light of the Bhagavat for people who are, more accustomed to having like respect for nature and things in nature and stuff like this. So, this report here, what I see is that it's really showing again how merciful Krishna is. He's trying to draw everybody back in whatever way that he possibly can. Like he's telling Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita, if you can't always think of me, you follow the rules and regulations. If you can't follow the rules and regulations, then you work for me. And if you can't work for me, then you just try to give up, just try to renounce, the fruits of your work. So Krishna is taking steps, to try to draw people in whatever way they see possible. And we had a lady come here to our temple. Well, she's been coming around for a long time, and she said, I'm just not attracted to the deities. I'm just not attracted to this personal feature. She couldn't. She was really having a hard time accepting that God could be a person. So I recommended to a friend. I said, okay, let's maybe show her the second canto where it's talking about the Virat Rupa, and maybe she can start to see Krishna in nature, and that can gradually elevate her. Yeah, because she's really into that. So these parts of the Bhagavatam. Now, a pure devotee, or one who's a pure bhakti yogi, they're gonna read this and they're not gonna be as attracted to it as they are to the 200 form of Krishna playing the flute. But Krishna understands that not everybody is there yet. So therefore, we have things like this section of the Bhagavatam just to get people started on this idea of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And even this Virat Rupa, it helps them realize in some way that God has form. It's like gigantic form, but it at least gets them started on the idea that there's some form. In the same way, that us doing deity worship in Krishna consciousness helps us realize that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is a person that we can serve. Otherwise, we just have some abstract idea in our head. So, but you get up. I was talking about this in the Pujari room this morning because I bathed the Sheilas, and we were discussing about deity standards when you have installed deities. And I was explaining to one of the bhaktas that I'm kind of training here that you have to have a certain number of brahmanas now to be able to install the deity, because the ISKCON deity worship ministry wants to make sure that there's enough people that are going to be able to take care of the deity, so you don't end up in a situation where you have one pujari that's doing everything, as that can happen in other temples. But this is because, and I was explaining that you have to wake up Krishna, you have to offer Krishna sweets, you have to bathe Krishna, you have to brush the teeth, you have to chant mantras, you have to make several offerings throughout the day and do artis, and you have to put Krishna to bed at night. And sometimes I even know pujaris, when they put Krishna to sleep, they'll start reading Krishna book or Chaitanya Charitamrita or something, like they're reading the deities to sleep. But all this really helps us with getting to know Krishna as a person and getting us I want to say reaccustomed, because our original position is servants, but it helps to get us reestablished in serving Krishna as a person. So, and that's probably that's all I would really add to this verse. But you had very nice realizations.
Yes, very good. Well, I don't know that I have any more to add to that. We could go on.
Yeah.
Mukunda, Prabhu, do you want to read a verse?
I think.
How is your English?
Is Mahara Manana Prabhu there? My voice is all of you, please.
Yes, he may very well be listening. We are up to verse 2:1:25. If you wish to read, we're up to 2:1:25. And, you know, I've been told that there are many people who tune in through Facebook and watch this class or tune in later and watch it too. So it's not like we're here just talking for our own benefits. There are other people who will be listening to what we say here.
Yes.
Yes. Now, Mukunda, would you like to read or shall we go on ourselves?
Not really, I can't because I'm driving.
Okay, all right.
To read something
Lavanga, would you like to do another verse? It's only 9:07. We can do one or two more verses.
Yeah, I'll do the next one. So we're on 26 now?
No, we're on 25. Right? You did 23, yeah. I did 24.
Yeah, and I'll 25. Okay, sorry. All right.
Yeah.
Ananda Koshe Shariyesmin Sapta Varna Samyute Varajya Purusha Yosya Bhagavan Dharana Shraya. The gigantic universal form of the personality of Godhead within the body of the universal shell, which is covered by sevenfold material elements, is the subject for the Virat conception. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Simultaneously, the Lord has multifarious other forms, and all of them are identical with the original fountainhead form of the Lord Shri Krishna. In the Bhagavad Gita, it has been proven that the original transcendental and eternal form of the Lord is Shri Krishna, the absolute personality of Godhead. But by his inconceivable internal potency, Atmamaya, he can expand himself by multifarious forms and incarnations simultaneously without being diminished in his full potency. He is complete, and although innumerable complete forms emanate from him, he is still complete without any loss. That is his spiritual or internal potency. In the 11th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, the personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna, manifested his Virat Rupa just to convince the less intelligent class of men who cannot conceive of the Lord as appearing just like a human being, that he actually has the potency of his claim to be the supreme absolute person without any rival or superior. Materialistic men can think, although very imperfectly, of the huge universal space, comprehending an innumerable number of planets as big as the sun. They can only see the circular sky overhead without any information that this universe, as well as many other hundreds and thousands of universes, are each covered by sevenfold material coverings of fire. Are each covered by sevenfold material coverings of water, fire, air, sky, ego, noumenon, and material nature. Just like a huge football, pumped and covered, floating on the water of the casual ocean, wherein the Lord is lying as Mahavishnu. All the universes and seed are emanating from the breathing of the Mahavishnu, who is but a part of a partial expansion of the Lord. and all the universes presided over by the Brahmas vanish when the Mahavishnu withdraws his great breath. In this way, the material worlds are being created and vanquished by the supreme will of the Lord. The poor, foolish materialist can just imagine how ignorantly he puts forward an insignificant creature to become his rival incarnation, simply on the allegations of a dying man. The Virat Rupa was particularly exhibited by the Lord just to give lessons to such foolish men so that one can accept a person as the incarnation of Godhead only if such a person is able to exhibit such a Virat Rupa as Lord Krishna did. The materialistic person may concentrate his mind upon the Virat or gigantic form of the Lord in his own interests, as recommended by Shukadeva Goswami, but he must be on his guard not to be misled by pretenders who claim to be the identical person as Lord Krishna, but are not able to act like him or exhibit the Virat Rupa comprehending the whole universe. So, we are getting some long purports today, Yamuna.
Yes, but repeat that because it gets so to the point, the translation.
Yes, the translation. The gigantic universal form of the personality of Godhead within the body of the universal shell, which is covered by sevenfold material elements, is the subject for the Virat conception. So, there's something that's said in this purport that basically it mimics one at the very beginning of Shita Upanishad. It is said, Prabhupada says here, he can expand himself by multifarious forms and incarnations simultaneously without being diminished in his full potency. He is complete, and although innumerable complete forms emanate from him, he is still complete without any loss. So the Shita Upanishad, in the very beginning in the invocation, there's that verse, Om Purnamada Purnamidam, Purna Purnamudachate, Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vishishite, that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is perfectly complete, and because he is completely perfect, all emanations from him, such as this phenomenal world, are perfectly clipped as complete wholes. Whatever is produced in a complete whole is also complete in itself. And because he is a complete whole, even though so many universes emanate from him, he remains the complete. So, anyway, so there's all these different forms of the Lord that are for a specific, that are for an exact specific purpose. All these different incarnations. So this was a little bit strange to me when I first came to Krishna consciousness, and sometimes it's strange to others, especially if you're coming from like a Christian background. This idea of there being some form of the Lord, or this idea of there being many forms of the Lord, even if you have some idea that God has a form, that he has many forms and multi incarnations as stated in this purport. And I remember I told a devotee once, I said, how can this be possible? I mean, you're telling me there's a fish incarnation, there's a tortoise incarnation. You're telling me that God lies down on an ocean and breathes, and all the universes come from him. And then there's another incarnation that enters into each one of these universes. And then there's another expansion that enters into every single atom, and also within the heart of every living entity. And then we have the Virat Rupa, and then we have, pastime incarnations like Nishima, who appears for Prahlad, and then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and Ramachandra, and so forth, Parashuram, and the whole Desha avatar and whatnot. And they said, do you believe God is unlimited? And I said, well, yes, of course. And then they said, well, why are you trying to limit God by saying he cannot have many forms? And I said, okay, all right. I understand. You got me there. So, so the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he appears in many different forms, but it's basically just to convince people and that he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And this purport specifically states that Krishna showed this Virat Rupa just to convince the less intelligent class of men who cannot conceive of the Lord as appearing just like a human being. So Krishna has various ways of trying to draw the living entities back to him. So this Virat Rupa that is mentioned here in the 11th canto, Krishna asked, or Arjuna asked Krishna to show this form. And this form really wasn't needed for Arjuna to be convinced that Krishna was the Supreme Personality of Godhead, because Arjuna already said in the 10th chapter of Bhagavad Gita that I totally accept that you are the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But this form that Krishna shows is mainly just to convince others, because within this universal form, Arjuna saw past, present, future, just about everything within this universal form. But we can see that first when Arjuna saw this, he was like, wow. And then at the end, he becomes terrified. And he's like, okay, Krishna, enough. I don't want to see anymore. And then Krishna then took his four-armed form, and then his two-armed form is Krishna. Because this is the form that Arjuna likes. And at the end of the day, the ones who are the devotees of Krishna, this is the form that they like. They like to see Krishna in his two-handed form. But there are people out there that they need further convincing. So therefore, we see in the Bhagavatam, it doesn't just give us these wonderful pastimes of Krishna, even though that's what all these cantos are building up to. We don't just get that two-handed form, but we also get, as explained in this purport, how Mahavishnu is lying down on the cosmic ocean, how all the universes are emanating from him, how the universes are set up. For instance, it's mentioned here that trying to find it, that how it says here, okay, they there are hundreds and thousands of universes, are each covered by a sevenfold material coverings of water, fire, air, sky, and ego. So there are people that need to know this. They need to know how the universe is set up. They need to know how things are going on. So that's why
I don't understand one of these material coverings. Excuse me, Lavanga, Madre Lavanga,
Yeah.
but there's one that's called Numinam, and I don't understand what that is. It says the material coverings of water, fire, air, sky,
I was
ego,
thinking,
Numenon, and material nature. What's Numenon? Do you know?
is it? I thought Numenum was the same thing as ether. Earth, water, fire, air. Is that not the same thing as ether?
Oh, okay, maybe. I really don't know.
I can look it up. I'll look it up. I'll look it up after I'll do some research after class. That was my understanding. Because I always earth, water, fire, air, sky. I was thinking that was the same. I was just another word for ether.
Okay.
But I could be wrong. I'll double check for you.
Okay.
So there are people that they need to see this in order to be convinced. So this is why the Bhagavatam, we're getting this right here, because this is all to help us understand ultimately when we get to the 10th canto that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Otherwise, if we just jump to the 10th canto, then we might take Krishna to be like an ordinary person. And also because the Bhagavatam is one of the Puranas. All the Puranas they deal with different subject matters, and one of them, at least from what I've been told, I haven't read all the Puranas, is that they all have some sort of story of creation. That's one of the elements in all the Puranas. So therefore, because the Bhagavatam is also known as the Bhagavat Purana, we're also getting the story of the Virat Rupa and a little bit of the creation in here as well. Do you have anything you'd like to add?
Well, not really, because it's more of the same, just this idea of how tremendous the universal form is, and how that's there to convince those, who don't already understand God's nature. I don't really have anything to add to that. So.
All right. Yeah, sometimes, Prabhupada, he'll put the same points in like the different purports.
Yes.
In the section that's talking about the same thing. But it's nice because it kind of helps us stick in the head a little more. We need to hear it over and over again. So,
well, do you want me to read one more? We have, it's 9:22. Maybe we should do one more, right?
One more, yeah.
Right. Yeah, because they're related anyhow, so the discussion is related. So let me go on to 2:126. Patalam et hasyahi padam mulam pantati parshna prapade rashatalam mahatalam vishvashrojo ta gulpao ta talat talam vai purushasya janje. Sorry that I don't have the correct pronunciation for that, but the translation. Persons who have realized it have studied that the planets known as Patala constitute the bottoms of the feet of the universal Lord, and the heels and the toes are the Rasatala planets. The ankles are the Mahatala planets, and his shanks constitute the Tala planets. Oh, this is a very visual one. Let's read this purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Ki Jai. Outside the bodily existence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the manifested cosmic existence has no reality. Everything and anything of the manifested world rests on him, as confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita 9.4, but that does not imply that everything and anything in the vision of a materialist is the Supreme Personality. The conception of the universal form of the Lord gives a chance to the materialist to think of the Supreme Lord, but the materialist must know for certain that his visualization of the world in a spirit of lording over it is not God realization. The materialistic view of exploitation of the material resources is occasioned by the illusion of the external energy of the Lord, and as such, if anyone wants to realize the supreme truth by conceiving the universal form of the Lord, he must cultivate the service attitude. Unless the service attitude is revived, the conception of Virat realization will have very little effect on the seer. The transcendental Lord, in any conception of his form, is never a part of the material creation. He keeps his identity as Supreme Spirit in all circumstances and is never affected by the three material qualities, for everything material is contaminated. The Lord always exists by his internal energy. The universe is divided into 14 planetary systems. 7 planetary systems called Bur, Bhuvar, Svar, Mahar, Janas, Tapas, and Satya are upward planetary systems, one above the other. There are also 7 planetary systems downward, known as Atala, Vitala, Sutala, Talatala, Mahatala, Rasatala, Ipatala, gradually one below the other. In this verse, the description begins from the bottom because it is in the line of devotion that the Lord's bodily description should begin from his feet. Shukadeva Goswami is a recognized devotee of the Lord, and he is exactly correct in the description. So just to make sure we know what we're talking about, I will reread the translation. Persons who have realized it have studied that the planets known as Patala constitute the bottoms of the feet of the universal Lord, and the heels and the toes are the Rasatala planets. The ankles are the Mahatala planets, and his shanks constitute the Talatala planets. So I don't really know too much about this, but we can see that this is definitely a, how would you say, a personalization or a visualization of the different levels of the universe, starting from the most basic, being representing the bottoms of the feet of the universal Lord, and moving on up, as just as is explained in the purport. This is the first time that I'm introduced to this concept of the different parts of the universe being, different parts of the body of the universal Lord, and I find that fascinating. I imagine maybe in the next verse or whatever, we're going to go on up into the higher planets, but here we start with the very basic. And so I really don't know what to say about this. If you have something to say about this, or if Mukunda has anything to say about this, the first time that I see this concept of the kind of like personalization of the planets into like the body of the Lord,
Yeah. What I get from this is that it's talking about the lower planetary systems being like the feet of the universal Lord, and really, what it's kind of doing is helping one realize, at least this is according to what I'm getting from it, that everything ultimately emanates from Krishna, even the lower planetary systems. I think at least kind of like I had this concept growing up in Christianity that, okay, you have heaven and you have earth, which is created by God, but no one ever talks about hell being created by God. It's almost like nobody ever says that. I remember thinking when I was a child, I was like, but there's this hell. Like, you guys talk about it. Like, who created this hell? Where did this hell come from? Oh, the hell came from Satan. Well, who gave, where does Satan's power come from? And so what the Bhagavatam does in the beautiful picture of Krishna consciousness, and that is teaching ultimately that everything emanates from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Then, like on this, what is that verse? Aham sarvasya prabhavamata sarvam pravartate iti matva vajati ma buddha bhavasama. That where Krishna is telling Arjuna, I'm the source of all material and spiritual worlds. Everything emanates from me. And therefore, the wise who know this engage in my devotional service and worship me with all their hearts. So this engage in my devotional service, it's actually very important for one who's realized ultimately that everything comes from me. Then what is their next step? They engage in my devotional service. So Prabhupada says in this purport that which I think is pretty beautiful. He says, unless the service attitude is perceived, the conception of Virat realization will have little effect on the seer. So this morning, we were having a discussion over breakfast, me and several devotees, about, just the impersonal idea of the absolutes. And I was saying how this can be a little bit easier for someone entering spiritual life, because if they don't think of God as being a person, then there's nothing that they have to serve. But if God is a person, then he's superior to me, and if someone is superior to me, then I have to serve them. So without this idea of service, unless this service attitude is developed, It's just like some, like maybe you see some fireworks, or I think a few weeks ago you were, I don't know if you were in the mainland US yet, but did you hear about the Northern Lights? They were coming down low
Like,
enough that people in
yes.
the US were able to see them. And so I remember people were taking pictures at night up in the sky of the Northern Lights. I couldn't see them from where I was. I was in Florida at the time. But people in like the rural, the countryside of Florida and countryside of like Alabama and up so forth, they were able to see. And so they were taking pictures and they were posting it on Facebook, like, oh, wow, look at this great cosmic thing. Look at this, but and it's amazing. But then these things pass because like you had this amazing event and then it kind of just goes on. So having this conception or maybe realizing this Virat Rupa, it might be kind of awestruck in a way. People are like, wow, I've realized this, I've hit a new peak in my spiritual realization. But unless the service mentality develops, then people will kind of eventually just go back to doing whatever they were doing. Like I know people who have joined certain ashrams and they've gotten really into their meditation, like meditating on the bright light or the impersonal conception, and they're doing that for a while. And maybe they're feeling the effects of peace, feeling the effects of bliss, but eventually it's like that reaches a certain point and then you're like, okay, I have to do something else because the soul's nature is to be active. We have to engage in serving something. I think I was listening to a lecture by Prabhupada today where he was saying what he always says is that we can't live without serving something. We're always serving our family or our senses or whatever, and it's such, you think, yeah, I know, but really it's like, it's true, we can't escape being a servant. Just like like he said, just like sugar can't escape being sweet, it's like its intrinsic
Mhm.
nature. So
Yes.
so in that way, that's why Prabhupada's saying here that unless you develop this concept of service, it's going to have this Virat Rupa, at the end of the day, is going to have very little effect on the seer because you're going to go serve something. Eventually it'll be your senses or somebody else, like Sabari Muni. He was this great yogi. He was meditating underwater, but he saw some fish mating. He became agitated. Then he was like, okay, I need to go get a wife. He got 50. He had a good time for many, many years. But, because he wasn't engaged in service, eventually, he actually had to use all his yogic power to manifest this big mansion and to keep all these 50 wives satisfied and to make himself beautiful enough that some girl would want to marry him. And it worked a little bit too well, and they all wanted to marry him. So yeah, that's what happens, and I've seen that practically in the world. People who come, they join various ashrams, and then if they don't cultivate this service attitude, then eventually they leave it and they get a job or something else or do something else of some service. Or sometimes they'll take up mundane, or I don't want to say mundane, but they'll take up like welfare work, hospitals, helping the poor, whatnot.
Yes.
And
So it's very
actually,
important that I guess the point is that it's very important that we remember that the Virat Rupa is not the end. It's like, part of the process of realizing the Supreme, that we don't get tied up into it, like that we're connecting and we become like an egomaniac, like God, I am God, or I understand so well, when we understand nothing really. So I guess it's like the point is that it's not the end, but these images may help us along, but we have to remember that that's not the end. So that's what I get out of, the combination of the verses that we've read, today,
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
So-
yeah, like you're saying, it can be valuable for some time, but you got to kind of develop if you really want to, if you really want to be a true spiritualist. Like it reminds me of when I was a child and I was learning mathematics, and I remember it was the first grade, so they were teaching addition and subtraction, and to teach us addition, they had us use, I don't know what they use now, but back then it was a number line, and the number line would help us, and I remember I got like, I liked using the number line, like it made things easy and I could figure it out. But then later the teacher took it away because she was like, I don't want you to, she said to me when I was learning my addition and subtraction, she said, if you really want to be good at math, you can't keep using this. You have to be able to do it in your head eventually. So, like the same way in the spiritual path, if you get caught up on this Virat Rupa or you're seeing the supreme in nature, it can help you for some time. But unless if you want to actually be a true spiritualist, you have to keep going. Otherwise, you'll end up right back where you were before.
Yes. Now it's at the moment, if Mukunda Prabhu wants to say anything about Virat Rupa or anything we've been discussing in English, now is the moment.
His English is good enough to be in this class. His English is really good. He doesn't show it.
No, he can't because he's driving.
He's driving,
Okay.
yeah. But
So
no, next time he should say something, because he refuses to speak Spanish, and now I'm going to use him and make him speak English in these classes.
Well, good. So I hope he keeps coming back, and I hope next time he's able to speak as well. And I guess next week, I'll lead next week. We'll just keep going. We hope Govinda will join us. We hope the other devotees who have joined us in the past will show up to the Zoom as well. And I just wish to repeat to anybody who's still listening to us that Manonatha Maharaja has agreed to give another class in questions and answers in English. And we haven't established the exact date yet because we are missing the questions. So please, if you have any questions about Srimad Bhagavatam, about the Bhagavad Gita, about anything, any of the articles that Maharaj publishes on a daily basis, any of the books, if you have any questions at all, please submit them in the chat, and we will be able to get make the in-person class a reality. Okay, so Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Madhukapa, Vishakti, Jai my obeisance, Haribo.
Manonatha Maharaja ki jai.
Manamash ki jai.
Thanks.